Hello,
Got
good
it.
morning, everyone.
So
We're
you're
going to
gonna
start
time
first
me.
session today. We have
start.
Ms. Lori Herson and Christina Michael presenting open digital tools for teaching and learning.
Hi. Good morning. My name is Lori Herson. I'm an open educational technologist at the Graduate Center. This is my colleague Christina Michael, who's also an open educational technologist at the Graduate Center. And today we're going to be talking about Manifold and the CUNY Academic Commons, which are two open source digital tools that have been and are being developed at the Graduate Center and throughout CUNY. So let's see. So, oh, I see the problem here. Sorry about our TBD. How do you advance this? Go backwards to go forwards. Okay, so this is part of like a larger project going on at the Graduate Center to build kind of like open digital infrastructure throughout CUNY. You'll hear from the Open Lab after us. It's kind of these open source tools that are being used throughout CUNY, and we're going to talk about how these tools are being used in courses today. This is also kind of connected to loosely the adoption of open educational resources throughout CUNY. So in recent years, there's been a lot of projects and funding for professors to convert their courses to ZTC courses where you use zero cost or open education materials in the class. And these two platforms are particularly good for ZTC and OER courses because you can upload public domain text, you can integrate multimedia into your courses using the Academic Commons and Manifold. So if you're not familiar, the Commons is a WordPress platform for anyone to use at CUNY. If you have a CUNY email, you can register and log in. It was started in 2008 as a way to allow faculty across different CUNY campuses to collaborate, connect, form research groups, build websites for conferences or projects they were working on. It's located at commons.gc.cuny.edu. I realize that's not up here. But more recently, in about the past 2 years, we've opened up the Commons. Originally, it was only faculty and staff who could sign up, and now we've opened up the Commons to any CUNY student, anyone with a CUNY email, and people have started using the Commons for teaching. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So some of the things that you can do on the Commons now, the Commons can have different privacy levels. So unlike Blackboard, which is confined to only your class can see your class instance, the Commons can be private to your class, but you can open it up increasingly, making it more public. Your class can be private to you. It can be public just to people on the Commons, so other CUNY students can see their friends' courses. Other professors could see your course, or the course, if you want to, could be entirely public, open to the whole internet. But some of the things professors have done in their courses is use the Commons as a way to turn in weekly deliverables, turn in a blog post, turn in homework, and then these kind of blog posts or these weekly homeworks get scaffolded into sometimes a larger digital project, and you'll see an example of that later today. Because the Commons is built on WordPress and students can create blog posts and even build their own Commons sites, it's kind of facilitating this fostering digital literacy for students. WordPress actually runs about 30% of all the websites on the internet at this point, so if students graduate knowing WordPress, they can take that into the next step of whatever they're doing. I already mentioned the public and private spaces. I'll give you an idea of what that looks like in a course later today. The Commons is responsive, so we know a lot of students are reading on their phones, looking at looking at their coursework on their phones. So the Commons can be designed so it looks good on a phone, looks good on a tablet. It's built to be accessible, so if students are using screen readers, it's good for that. And you can integrate other digital tools. Professors have used Google Maps and different sorts of audio on the Commons and integrated it right into their course site. And it also allows for experiential learning. So the students can go out into the city as their campus, have some sort of experience, attend a music event, and then come back to the Commons and write it up and share it with their peers in their class. And we'll also see an example of that. So I think I'm not going to discuss this one today. We decided to cut that, but I'm going to talk about 2 courses that were taught on the Commons that kind of demonstrates those teaching possibilities that I just mentioned. And we're going to share these slides. I think they're going to collect the slides, and these links are all live. So if you want to then return to these courses later, you can. So the first course I'm going to talk about is this Technologies of Reading course. It was taught by Professor Andy Silva at York College. And it was kind of a English meets DH class where they were exploring different ways of reading texts. And you can see that her Commons site doesn't look like a Blackboard instance, a little more dynamic, a little bit more media and images integrated. And what's cool is you'll see the next site looks completely different. So there is this sort of design flexibility that the Commons offers, and then you can make your main menu say whatever you want. And these sites actually informed future development of the Commons. So you'll see here that she has her syllabus, she has her course schedule on the Commons, she has different projects where students could go in and click on to find the directions for their projects. And then every week, the students were turning in blog posts that were focused on different aspects of the course, different texts that they were reading. You'll see some of them have their final project listed here, which I'm going to talk about in a second. One of the projects that she did was when they were reading Isabella Whitney's Her Last Will and Testament. In order to explore the text a little bit more, she actually had students go to Google Maps. You can actually create your own Google map and save it. You can use Google Maps, and so they had to read the text, find a couple, so the story set in London. And so when students were reading this story, they had to then find 3 places on the map that were mentioned in the story, mark it on the map, include the quote, and then explain kind of how this place is important in the story. So after they've mapped 3 different locations from the story, they take that link and then they put it on the blog, and students could see each other's maps, right, and see what other different places other students picked out as important for that story. So in that way, she's both using the Commons to bring students together, but she's also integrating other digital tools into her coursework. And then this is an example of a final project. So a commonplace book is this older idea where people would clip things out and save it in a book over time. But she used the affordances of the digital to have students create their own commonplace book as their final project. So students actually had to build their own website on the Commons. Anyone can create a site or a group. And so students built a site. You can see this student decided on his own background. And then they had to write like 7 or 8 new blog posts as part of their final project that were exploring different aspects of the text that they hadn't already gone over in class. So in this way, the students both learning how to build their own website, making design decisions, but also creating new blog posts, creating different ways to explore the text. And they have this in perpetuity, right? This isn't going to go away. This doesn't disappear after 2 years. They have access to this work for as long as they want to. So that's another good thing about the Commons. This course is actually, I've presented this course many times, but never here at Lehman. This is from a professor at Lehman, Jeanette Tilley. So she was teaching a music class here, and she used the Commons to facilitate both like dissemination of course materials. She had her schedule of classes on the blog, but also for each week, she had a page that described like what the reading is, and it's because it's a music class, what they're listening to, and then she would link directly to the piece of music that they were listening to as a YouTube video. And she really took advantage of the public and private nature of the Commons. So when students were listening, each week they have to listen and then try and apply concepts. But that can be nerve-wracking, that can be scary if you're posting what you think about a piece of music and all your peers could see it. So she really took advantage of this possibility to have students create private posts that are only visible between the student and the professor. So each week students turned in a private post as part of their listening journal. And this post, you would read their post, see what the students were kind of thinking, feeling, applying concepts about the music, give them feedback before they came to class, and then when they came to class, they'd have a larger, more public conversation with their peers about that piece of music. But she also took advantage of the public nature and the experiential learning possibilities of being here in New York City. So students, they were asked to at least 3 times go out in the city and go to a different music event. And when they went to that event, they would then the music journalists they might become had to come back to the blog and write a music review of this event that they went to. And so these went into the collaborative blog, and then they would have to comment on each other's music reviews. So they were both private writing, kind of scaffolding towards writing something more public, and then when they went out into the city and did this sort of experiential learning thing, they came back and wrote more publicly for their peers during the class. So these are just two very quick examples of what can be done on the Commons and what's possible. In our last release, our last version release, we actually made it more possible to look through the courses that were on the Commons. So previously, you would have no way to find what courses were being offered, but now in the main menu, when you go to the Commons, you'll see this Courses tab. And if you want to look through other courses that are being offered on the Commons, maybe you want to see something in math or history, because I didn't cover that today, all the courses are listed here as far as we know. We'll also see that some of them, you can, with technology information, it's a public site. So you can click into that site and go through the syllabus and look at if students are posting, kind of see what students are doing. But some of the sites are private, so you're not going to be able to get into those sites. But that's the kind of granularity of the privacy levels on the Commons. So you can look through and kind of see what's being offered and also maybe jump into a few and take a look if you'd want to. And if you'd like to learn more, or you're getting started on the Commons and you don't know what to do, we do have an extensive documentation for getting started, building a site, building a group. And once you register and log in, there's this little help button. And if you visit our help page, there's all sorts of pages about how to build the site, what the first steps might be. And also, if you get stuck, you can send us a message, and I guarantee there is actually a real human on the end of that who will answer you and help you kind of move along in your explorations of the Commons. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Christina Michael, but if you have questions, I'll be here. Thank you all.
Okay, so the other open source platform that we're developing at the Graduate Center is called Manifold Scholarship. And Manifold Scholarship is a publishing platform. It's a digital publishing platform that allows you to take either text that you yourself have created or openly licensed, so Creative Commons licensed, or public domain texts, and put them up into really beautiful digital editions that you can add resources to. You can add multimedia resources to them. You can host annotation conversations with your students because it supports social annotation. And your students can look at it on a phone or a mobile device or their iPads. It's a project that is coming out of a collaboration between the Graduate Center, University of Minnesota Press, and Cast Iron Coding. It's Mellon funded. It's in its 5th year of development right now, and it's being used across the country in a lot of different university presses, but also digital humanities centers and libraries. The CUNY installation is specifically dedicated to teaching. So I'm going to walk you through how we've been using it at the Graduate Center and show you a few examples. But first, I am going to walk you through the interface, just so you have a sense of what Manifold can do. Thank you. Okay, so this is a book called Metagaming that we always use to showcase Manifold because it's a book that was published actually through University of Minnesota Press, so it lives on the University of Minnesota Press instance of Manifold, but it's a book that is about computer games, and they really took full advantage of all of the possibilities that Manifold presents for a digital publication. So we like to use it to showcase what Manifold can do. So first I'm just going to show you the reading interface. Okay, so this is how the text appears. So you can see the text is in the middle of the screen. As you scroll down, I'm not sure how good the contrast is, but you can see the highlighted areas are places that people have highlighted. And then places that are underlined are places that people have left annotations. So if you click on that, there we go. It opens up the shelf that has all the annotations in it. So you can see it shows the text that was highlighted for the annotation, and then a conversation can start below the text. You can also see, as you scroll through, these little squares. Oh, and this is a problem. Okay. It's there now, but it's because it needs to be in full screen. At any rate, so these little squares indicate places where a resource has been placed by the author. Usually it will appear, the resource will appear in the margin here, but because it's in the bottom. It's in the bottom, yeah, but it appears in the bottom when you're on your phone, so the screen needs to be maximized for it to display correctly. But yeah, you can see it pops up down here, and if you click on it, it opens up a pop-up window that has the annotation here, and you can add audio, video, text. You can add links as annotations, and I'll show you if we go a little further down here. We have a video. So the video can just play right here. You can also do audio files. And then when your students or the user X's out of it, they're right back in the same place where they were. So that's the reading interface. And then you can also see, actually, you can embed, so those are resources that you can add that would, that you annotate the text with so that they show up in the margin. You can also add multimedia to the text itself. So you can have an iframe that has, here you can see images, but it could be a video. It could also be a quiz for your students to be able to test their own understanding. And it can be right in line in the text like that. In terms of the controls up here, in the upper left-hand corner is the drop-down menu that has the table of contents that you can click through. Over here in the upper right-hand corner are a bunch of controls where the user, like the individual user, can control for themselves what the reading experience is like. So under this eye, you can choose to see or hide the annotation, your own annotations or other annotations or highlights, and you can choose to see or hide the resources. So users can really decide if they want a very dynamic experience of the text or if they want a very traditional experience of the text. And this can be really helpful if you want to take a first pass through without looking at what other people have said or highlighted, and then you want to go back and see what other people have said and highlighted. Here you can control a few things about the way the text appears. So you can make it bigger or smaller. You can make it serif or sans serif. You can have dark mode or light mode, and you can change the justification. And this really shows how Manifold is responsive to the web browser. So I think a really strong feature of Manifold for teaching specifically is that these texts will display as well on your students' phones as they will on their tablets, as they will on their computers. And I know from personal experience teaching literature that a lot of students do all of their reading on their phone. So I've had a student read Moby Dick on his phone. And especially if you're teaching an online class or a class where all of your materials are digital, so an OER class, having the materials themselves be accessible on mobile devices is really important because a lot of the OER materials don't display well on phones. Okay, so that is the reading interface. And then just to really quickly walk you through, just trying to see how I'm doing on time, the project homepage. This is called, the texts live in a project. The projects are called, they have what's called a homepage where you can get all of this information. So the homepage is consists of several what we call content blocks, which is just the area that goes across from left to right on the screen. So the top content block is the hero. It has the title. It has a cover, and this is all customizable by you. It has a background image, which you probably can't see very well. You can have some information about your project. You can also customize all of these buttons. So you can have a button that says read online. You can have a button that says table of contents that takes them right to the table of contents. You can also have over here, you can see there's a place to buy the paperback. In a teaching context, you can actually, instead of having, this takes you to a shopping cart where you can purchase the book since it's a University of Minnesota Press book. But in a teaching context, you can make a button that says download. And so you can let your students download the whatever file you use to create the project. So that's nice because your students, if they don't have internet access or they're going to be on the subway, they can download it and read it on their mobile device. Down here, you can see some options for social media integration. So you can set it up so that your project pulls in tweets from Twitter, which would then live in this recent activity block below here. And this can be a really nice feature if you do have some kinds of Twitter assignments in your class, because it gives, you can see this book is very active in the Twitter sphere. It gives a really nice sense of the way in which a book has like a social life, right? That you can like bring the conversation literally into the book itself. If you do not have any interest in doing a Twitter aspect of your curriculum, though, you can also hide this. So the project homepage is fully customizable. There's a lot of different options of types of content that you can display on your homepage, and it can be really involved. So it can have the social activity area, it can have a table of contents area, or you can actually have a project that's just the homepage. Just the hero content block. So if your book is, it just needs to be a place where your students can get into the book and download it, you could just have this, have some information, and have two buttons that says, download and start reading. This place is where all of the resources live. So I showed you where the resources were embedded in the actual text, so you can embed them in a place in the text, but they will also, you can also have them on the homepage separately from actually, you don't have to embed them in the text. They'll be down here in the resource collection. And the resources you can put into collections. So in this book, they actually built some video games, so they have those in a resource collection. And the resource collections are searchable. In a teaching context, we've had some instructors who have been creating resource collections for each week of their each week or each unit of their syllabus. And so then it has all of the resources right there in a collection that's searchable. So like articles, videos, images that they want their students to be able to look at. I'm going to come back to show you, what time is it? 9:52. Okay. Actually, I can do it really quickly. So that was from the University of Minnesota Press instance. Here we have the CUNY instance of Manifold, which actually is also on this tab. So, so this is the CUNY instance of Manifold. And just to show you, give you a sense of how it's been how it's been used across CUNY so far. These are our featured texts. So people have been creating textbooks. This is a textbook that someone has created. People have also been remixing OER textbooks, so taking out the chapters that they don't want, adding a chapter, an introduction. We've also been using it for things that have been coming out from our Teaching and Learning Center for distribution within CUNY. And it's actually also been used, so Beyond Populism is a book that's under contract with a press right now, and it is being used to host the peer review is being done. Part of the peer review is being done through CUNY's instance. And then these books on the bottom are books that instructors have been using in teaching, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a little bit more detail in a moment. So in general, for teaching, you can use Manifold to publish really dynamic, customized versions of texts that are in the public domain or that are publicly licensed or that you yourself have created. We have more and more people who are using it to make custom textbooks. It really ensures the accessibility of your text because students can use it no matter what device they're using, and you can include any of like the notes or text or other materials that you want right in the page. So we have instructors who have been using it to create like a one-stop shop for a particular reading, where all of the supplementary materials are right there all together. Another a really important feature of Manifold for teaching is that it does support social annotation. So this is really important. I mean, I've used it in both my face-to-face classes and classes that I'm teaching remotely. So in face-to-face classes, if you design assignments that ask your students to use social annotation before you come to class, you have a sort of heat map of where students have been engaged before you get to class. And it's been really interesting for me to see that asking students both why you'll see that they kind of cluster where they tend to engage with the text. And so it's been really interesting for me to see that asking students follow-up questions as to why everybody commented on a particular section of text has been just as evocative as asking why nobody commented on a particular section. Because you think that nobody commented because they're not interested in that part, but a lot of times it's for another reason. It's because they were confused by something or they were made uncomfortable for some reason. So the social annotation feature of Manifold is really strong for teaching. And the last way that people have been using it is to publish student work. So we have faculty who have been using it to publish final papers so that your students, you work and revise the papers and get them polished, and then you get to have them in, they get to have this like very professional looking publication of their work on Manifold, and they know that it is discoverable by other people, so it kind of raises the stakes of the final papers. And then you can also use it in future classes to show your new students what your previous students have done and sort of continue the conversation beyond that. It has specific benefits for you if you're teaching an OER course. The most important being that it allows you to talk about how, you know, all OER materials already are living in public in some way. So it allows you to really capitalize on that and have students think about what it means to be engaging in the sort of public digital sphere, especially if they're doing social annotation. I'm going to move along in the interest of time and just show you a couple quick examples of actual texts that are up. So this is a great example of a faculty's use of Manifold. This is a professor who's teaching Petrarch's poetry at Hunter, and she found that every semester, it's a semester-long class that she teaches routinely. She always teaches the same 75 poems of Petrarch's 350 plus poems. And so she was able to use Manifold to create a custom edition. She wrote her own introduction, and she only included the 75 poems that she herself uses, and she included with each poem a resource in which someone is reading the poem aloud in Italian. So her students get to read it as well as hear it in Italian. And she's also been adding different articles, and she's planning on also adding an image. She has the images of the actual text with annotations that various people, but I think even Petrarch made, although now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm not sure if that's true. At any rate, she's going to include those so that her students can also, while they're engaging with this digital version, they can also get a sense of what the physical version was like easily within the page. And I am running out of time, so I'm just going to quickly show you. This is a text that was created by an American literature professor who found that all of his students, all of the books that he was teaching, they were 19th century books, are in the public domain, and all of his students were using different editions, even when he would ask them to get the same edition. So he found that the Manifold was really useful for him to create a kind of common copy of his text, of the text that they're reading. So he said they can read this version for free, they can read a text version if they want to, but they have to annotate in this digital version, so that there was a common text that they could all refer to in class and in their essays. He has a start reading button. So you can see this is an example of of a project that was really simple in terms of its layout of the homepage. So it just has the hero area and then a few resources of articles that he added to the text. And he also has been doing this with a few other instructors at the Graduate Center, and they have been creating through GitHub a guide for how to do this yourself. So he's been including style sheets and instructions so that other instructors can go to GitHub and follow along and also adapt this model easily to do in their own classes. So this is a great resource. If you're interested in this you can get to the GitHub place on this homepage. It is the narrative. It's actually on almost all of the 19th century texts that you'll see. And I am out of time, so I am just going to tell you that there is also a great portfolio of student work on the homepage, on CUNY's homepage, called Structuring Equality. You can see there a text that is composed of students' final papers. And if you want to learn more on CUNY's homepage, which is cuny.manifoldapp.org, this is the homepage you'll be at. There's a Learn button, which it would be easier to just show on the internet. Right here, this Learn button, where you can see some general information. There are some quick guides about how to get started, and there's also a link to further documentation. So this on Manifold's main page, there's further documentation that has lots of information about all of the features, and here at the bottom are a couple very basic quick guides. You can also contact me. I am here to help you use Manifold in your classes.
Cool. Thank you.